Welcome back to episode 22 of Chambers Chatter. I'm Laura Chambers Babelis.
And I'm Shay Chambers Helms. Today we're super excited to introduce Ricky Pollitzer to the show, who's actually a family relative of ours.
We want to give a big shout out to Sea Islands Crawl Space, Aesthetic Dentistry, and Social Soiree for their support of today's episode.
Ricky, thank you so much for being here today. It is wild that we are extended family and we've never really sat down and chatted. So this is quite a pleasure.
It's a shame.
I know, it really is. I'm glad we've got the opportunity. So I guess we'll just kind of start back at the beginning and you kind of tell us.
As the way we were related is our great-great-grandfather came to Hilton Head in 1862 during the occupation. And saw a lot of opportunity, became quite successful in everything. And he bought our family home on Port Republic Street in 1870.
Wow.
And that house stayed in the family till 1970, till my aunt sold it.
Wow.
And
long time.
So anyway, that's kind of where we, started from, came to. And then I ended up, most of my early life was in Burton, South Carolina.
Okay.
And Burton, was way out in the sticks then. There was a cotton field in front of my house. We lived kind of on Albuquerque Creek. And so when I was a kid, I was able to use my dad's boat when I was really young, and that got me into boating. But Burton then, I had a bicycle, and I would ride over to the air station. And their air station in those days had been decommissioned. It was about 1948 or 49. And there were a lot of families living on the air station. The Youngbloods lived in the hangar. There was a real big hangar, and they had offices upstairs. And the Youngbloods lived up there. And I would ride my bicycle on the way up the hill where the Albuquerque Creek goes under the bridge there on 21. There was a country store up there, and it was one of those old country stores where they had horse collars hanging from the rafters and a big barrel of something, and I mean, you smelled, when you went in, you could really smell the old store thing. And I would ride it all the way, rode it all the way to Seabrook one time. And Seabrook, of course, Claude McLeod explained all that was going on there. And one of my classmates, Jay McLeod, was his sister, and that's why I'd gone out there. The cotton field was owned by a black family called Harper. Mm-hmm. And the Harpers were out there picking cotton one day, and they said, come on and join us. And so I was out there picking cotton with the black family.
Awesome.
But it was too hard for me, so I quit doing it. But I'd spent the night with them in their house. He was a landowner, I remember my dad quite respected him. And their house didn't have windows. It had just boards that swung and closed the window up. It was pretty raw back in those days.
Yeah.
Gallops lived across the river. They had a farm right across the river from my house. And I would take the boat over there, and he was one of my first friends. And then we moved into Beaufort about when I was in the 5th grade. And your grandfather had bought some boats from the Paris Island. And they were government surplus, and they were run down, so he was fixing it up. And so he wanted me to come over and help him. So I helped him fix it up and everything. So that kind of got me into sailing because he taught me how to sail. And then we had the sailing club. The yacht club in those days was a gambling deal. They didn't have any boats or anything. And so we had our own kind of little sailing club that we started. Although I remember these old boats that Henry bought, and I think Ned Brown bought one, Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown, Ned Brown bought one. And the damn things would sink. but they had flotation in them, and so they would sink to the deck. So if you had to go sailing, you had to pump the damn thing out, and it took about 2 hours, so we really wanted to sail.
You're oversailing at that point.
Yeah, and then a bunch of kids started sailing Moss, which are a much smaller boat. And we had these regattas that we would go to. And they were a lot of fun. It was kind of a age when we could drive at 13, 14, and we were going out of town at these regattas, and the grown-ups kind of looked the other way when we were drinking and that kind of stuff. So it was quite a lot of fun. And they got into Y flyers later. Henry had a Y flyer made, and I think 3 or 4 Y flyers were made in Beaufort. And we raced those for a while. Growing up on the Point, I moved to the Point when I was about 5 or 6. And that was a big change in my life because Burton, I didn't have many friends. It was isolated. If you had to get around, I'd go out in the road and catch the Greyhound bus into town. It was 10 cents. My grandmother moved down from Maryland and bought a house on the Point at 107 Lawrence Street, which is right next to Tidal Home.
Mm-hmm.
And I met, I had met Larry before that, but we became real good friends after that and have been friends ever since. But the Point was an unusual place because we had, these big mansions that were there that for some reason, I guess they were cheap enough that people could buy them that had families and kids my age. So we had a group of kids around the green there. Well, everybody knows where the green is. And we all played on the green. There was just, baseball, football, whatever the season was, we'd be out there playing. And then we had the Point gang and we had the Rebo Road gang. and so the Rebo Road gang, the Point gang would play together. My Uncle Jack moved out to 100 Pines, and 100 Pines was just kind of getting built up as a subdivision then. Mm-hmm. And so I would go out and visit my cousin Johnny, and next door neighbor was Dan Highhour, and he and I became good friends. And there was a lot of houses being built. Your grandfathers were one of them. Mm-hmm. And we would, steal lumber and all that kind of stuff and do all kind of crazy stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Well, we would go to the movies at night, on Saturday, on the weekend. And walking down Bay Street after the movie, it was completely deserted. And when I was riding my bicycle on 21, a car would come by about every 30 minutes.
It's hard to believe.
That is so mind-blowing. Yeah. That is so mind-blowing.
I mean, the parents never worried about us, We were footloose and fancy-free. Even on the Point, we'd go out and, in the morning and stay in the river all day long we rowed a boat out to Bay Point one time.
Yeah,
rode it out there.
That's crazy.
Always with the tide. Came back with the tide. But nobody ever worried about us. It's kind of amazing, really, when you think about how protected kids are these days.
That is so true.
Did you have any favorite childhood memories growing up, or what were some of them? Sailing, obviously, is a big one.
Yeah. I mean, I got into flying later when I was in college. A friend of mine said, let's go out to the guard base. I've got a friend out there that will take us out and show us the airplanes. So I said, great. Went out there. Went out and watched the airplanes coming in. And he said, if you're interested in this, we have a 2-year program. A program that allows with 2 years of college, be able to come into the Guard and we'll send you to pilot training and all that. And I said, boy, that's great, because I was having to borrow money to go to school. And I said, I could come back, finish school and all that. So I went off and went to pilot training, graduated, came back, and flew in the Guard for about 1.5 years or 2 years. But all of the pilots were leaving to go to the airlines. And they said, you're stupid if you don't go with the airlines. And so I followed the crowd and went to work for Eastern Airlines. And I flew for Eastern for 23 years before they went bankrupt. And then I came back to Beaufort to work, and went to Hilton Head and started flying out of Hilton Head, and did that for 23 years.
Oh my gosh.
How cool.
Were you doing like private airlines?
Yeah,
or,
no,
okay.
I was flying for individuals. They would buy jets or something, and I had the qualifications, so I could fly for them.
I bet you met some
And
cool
so,
people.
Yeah, it was a good deal. I mean, I got to stay at home. I had an opportunity to go with another airline after Eastern went down, but you start at the bottom.
Oh.
And I just couldn't see that. And living in New York in a hotbeds apartment with other guys, it just didn't appeal to me anymore. Commuting is tough anyway. I'd been living in Beaufort and commuting to Atlanta to fly.
Yeah.
The only other thing is when Eastern went down, my wife had a school in Beaufort, and a private school. And she said, I'm burned out, I'm tired, I want to do something. Let's get on the boat and go somewhere. So we got on my sailboat and sailed it to Central America.
Whoa!
For a year.
So cool.
Took our 16-year-old son, who was, starting to get into trouble and that kind of stuff. And so we spent a wonderful vacation up the Rio Dulce in Guatemala, and toured the country, and we had a lot of fun.
Did you say you were gone for a year doing that? Oh, wow. That's awesome.
My son thought, he was going to get out of school. Oh, this is great and everything. And we tried to homeschool him, and it just wasn't working. And Ann said, well, we can either fight him or we can have fun.
I love that mindset. That's so true, though.
Yeah. So that's, so he went. And of course, being a teenager, he stayed up in the forecastle the whole time. So when we got to Guatemala, he got Guatemalan friends, and he was having a good time and everything. And when we got back, he started out like we couldn't believe it. He was just going to stay cooped up like that. But years later, he says it's the best thing that ever happened to him, So I don't know. He had a great time. So.
That's just a teenage boy at the time.
Yeah.
What are some of the big changes that you've seen in Beaufort over the years?
The influx of retirees has been unbelievable. I remember where the Enmark gas station is on 21, as you're going out of town, used to be a dairy. And that was Polk's Dairy.
Oh, man.
And of course, where the shopping centers are in there, that was all Trask Fields. Mm-hmm. I used to ride my bike up there. And of course, St. Helena and Ladies Island was just nobody there,
Yeah,
I mean, the Yeomans had a grocery store on Ladies Island. That was about it. Now, the ice house was a kind of interesting thing. My dad, when he got out of when he was a senior in college, his grandfather died. Your grandfather too, and he thought he was going to come back and run the ice plant. But when he got back, my aunt and uncle had kind of bought out other shares or something, so he couldn't do it. So he went into the Navy then, and that's how I ended up being a Yankee, because I was in grammar school and a kid told me one time, "You're a Yankee." And I said, "No, I'm not." And I went home to him. I said, "Mom, I'm not a Yankee, am I?" She said, "Honey, you were born in New York."
Oh my gosh.
War baby,
Oh my gosh.
That is too funny. Oh, my goodness. Did you meet your wife here in Beaufort?
Yeah, she's a Beaufortonian.
Okay, that's what I thought.
She's Christensen.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Christians have been here for a long time. But no, what happened is Ann's 3 years older than me. So we didn't really, we knew each other because she dated Larry's brother. So we were, kind of the kids in the back of the truck, while they were trying to take us places. But no, she had gotten divorced and came back to Beaufort, and they rounded up some bachelors to meet her and another gal. And so, I had a girlfriend at the time, and so she she said, well, she said, well, I'm coming back to Beaufort. And I said, well, give me a ring when you get back and just friendly talk. And damn, she didn't. She called me up, and my girlfriend was there, and she said, guess who this is or something. I couldn't figure it out, and I said, I hear kids in the background. I said, and that was her. So we started getting together, and boy, I'll tell you, it just, just worked. It was just worked.
Where was the place you took her on a date?
We went sailing.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And the thing that impressed me about her is she said, can we bring the kids?
Oh.
I said, absolutely, And so that's the kind of woman I wanted,
Yeah.
A woman that wanted to go do things and, wanted the kids to do things too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been great. We've had a great marriage.
That's amazing. And then y'all actually took a year sailing. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great thing to do. Both of us were at that stage in life where we could do it and still young enough to do it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you have any other stories you want to share with us? Or
I'll probably remember 10 of them when I drive out.
That always happens when you're off the camera.
Yeah.
But we really
Ricky,
appreciate you being here today.